So welcome to the Node.js NodeAPI team meeting for October 29th, 2021. We'll take our standard approach of looking at a few of the things that are tagged for milestone 11 and then go from there. So let me share my screen here. Oops, yeah, it's being live streamed. Okay. So the first thing we have there is the ask for a review on Node serial port. I think, Nikolai, you've been following that. Do you have an update or know where that's at?
This week, I don't have update. I didn't have the time to follow.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. I think we had Kevin last time who mentioned he's looking at it as well. But
I have a bit of an update.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Gabriel.
So, basically, they're running into a crash because of reference management, and I asked them for a reproduction so that I could see the crash and maybe trace it out for them. But I haven't seen if they've answered the question or not.
Okay.
So I tried to build it, run the tests, and everything worked fine. So there must be some different way to reproduce it.
Right. You need the magic site sequence or configuration to do that.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Okay. Well, it's good. Seems like they're still moving forward, and different people here are helping. So that sounds good. Okay, so the next thing we have on the list is looking at stale issues. I don't see that there were any added. The one that we have on the list is this one. And so this is the issue in the REPL. I know Jack looked a little bit at it, and so Kevin also was going to look at it. He says we're going to revisit this once this lands.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, start. So I think Kevin and someone else made a suggestion to use symbol to replace. We use like a unique GUID, but it was hard coded.
Yep.
So he recommended using symbol to sort of replace that. But the problem I found was for some reason it will crash one of the tests, but I couldn't quite pinpoint why that exactly is. I think if you scroll down, you should be able to see my response.
Okay, right to the very bottom.
Yeah, this one. So sorry. Go up. Yeah, that's yeah, this one. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So yeah, I'd seen the suggestion of a symbol.
Yeah.
And
the issue that I highlighted was sorry, up above that. Yeah, this one.
The one question I had, and maybe some other people on the call can help me understand, is I guess people using a symbol, like if we use a symbol and we use the code, where was the code here? Actually here, I'm going to find, I think there was one of the commits says use a symbol, right?
Yeah, it was the latest.
Like what we're trying to do is avoid conflict. So there'd still be a conflict if somebody said symbol for is wrap object, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And like, I guess it's less likely that somebody would put in something which is a symbol on an object versus a string, but I'm not sure. I guess I'm not sure it's massively different. Not disagreeing that a symbol I think a symbol might make sense, although we might still want the symbol we use the string for to be that GUID or something like that. Does that make sense to people, or is a symbol somehow making it less likely than I'm thinking? So that'd be my one suggestion. Maybe I'll put that here. One suggestion is maybe we.
I think like if you just simply go over properties with regular iteration, symbols typically not included unless they explicitly ask for in JavaScript. So definitely kind of symbol is it's much rarer to meet. But I guess it would be nice if we maybe do some kind of name spacing, like for example, not just saying like isWrap object, but saying something like a NodeAPI.isWrap object. So in this case, if we have a name of the symbol, which actually somehow like name spaced towards an API would be.
Yeah, what we've done with just the string is to use like a unique GUID, which is kind of like, I think, really unlikely for anybody to come up with that same GUID, right? Like, again, it could happen, but the likelihood is probably astronomically small.
Sorry, Michael, there is a legend cast.
Ah, thanks. Thanks for letting me know. Let me find participants. There we go. But then in terms of the crash, I don't see, like, if we're simply looking up, the only thing I could see is if for some reason there's different M's, right? Because we'll get a different symbol for each M. Is that correct?
That could be it, because I think the test that it crashes on, I think spawns a worker. So maybe that could potentially be an issue. But
right, so that, I mean, that's something to figure out. And if it is that we're doing on a different M, then I think we need to say, should we be having multiple M's, right. Or, you know, and if that's allowed, then again, the symbol isn't going to be workable because we need it to be consistent across them. So maybe that's the next thing to look at, because that's the only thing that I would expect to be any different, right?
Yeah.
Anybody else have any other suggestions or thoughts on that one before we move on? Okay, I guess not. So that's all we had in that particular list. In terms of issues tracking, go ahead.
Michael, I have another state issue. I copy on the shot the.
Okay, let me go there.
I don't know how to answer, and it's an old issue, so I don't know.
Okay, so we should add this to the list.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. So yes, let me go back. Is that going to, I don't think I want the bolding part. Okay, so. It asks me to construct a NodeAPI callback info.
Yeah, usually this object is built from the JS engine, no? So you have the NodeAPI underscore callback underscore info object that is a pointer, if I well remember, and then NodeAPI callback info is a wrapper, but
right.
it's something that you can you obtain from the JavaScript engine. I presume that he won't emulate the JavaScript engine. So,
right. I mean, I think most of the time we deal with that, don't we, by having a JavaScript made from JavaScript, and then that comes through, and you know, you can use that in your unit tests.
Yeah, but maybe he tried to test using the C++ or C. Yeah, C++ in this case, because
right.
using Node.API. Yeah.
it sounds like, I think it sounds like he's trying to call like a wrap. He's trying to call a binding from another binding, presumably, and so, you know, or he's trying to call a binding from native code, right? So I think the solution here is to factor out the body of the function that is requiring him to pass in a callback info, and to just call that with different parameters from wherever he needs to, and then have the JavaScript engine call the same function using the callback info from wherever the JavaScript engine calls that function. I think that's usually the solution when you're trying to call one of your own bindings.
It's more like, I guess what I don't understand is why wouldn't you just drive it through JavaScript?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's at least one worth a question. Like, do you really need to do something else? Because it makes it more complicated, right? And I think otherwise, like the NodeAPI callback info.
Oh, I see. He does talk about unit tests. Yeah. So yeah. Usually the unit tests are written in JavaScript. Yeah.
Right. Like we have a JavaScript front bit that says do this, and then it, you know, it triggers some JavaScript wrappers that then call the methods. Yep. And I'm just wondering, like, why wouldn't you do that? And it's sometimes it's just a, oh, well, I didn't think of doing it that way or something. Callback.
Yeah, I mean, you know, a callback info can be constructed using just an environment and a core,
right,
an API callback info.
Yeah.
Which can potentially be null, and then just don't do anything with it. It'll still construct, but you can't do anything with it because it'll crash.
Right. You would need to, this callback info, the only thing is like that is
opaque.
Yeah, that is opaque. But we already must.
Oh yeah, never mind. Yeah, that wouldn't work.
So we get callback info, but and then we later, well, you'd have to implement. Could they subclass callback info?
Yeah, but you still need to pass an API callback info when you initialize the superclass.
Right, but you'd have to pass in your own opaque structure.
Yeah, but which would have to be able to be given to an API get CB info, right?
Well, so, but I'm thinking you would like completely override all of these methods.
Yeah, I was just thinking, doesn't every class have like a default constructor? And I don't think we delete the default constructor for callback info, right?
Right.
So he could
so
just
it'd be
use
like
the default constructor.
Yeah, it'd be like subclass this, and then you would have to like any of these methods that gets, you know, they set data, get data. What is data? No, void star. Is there? You would have to implement all the things that like let you get the callback info from the. Because there are methods on here, aren't there, that are like get me. You know, where do we convert like?
Yeah. I know what you mean. Like we should have like an operator square bracket, I think, or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Like exactly. Like you would have to, you know. So maybe that's, you know, you would have to create your own callback info that callback info. You would, we think you would have subclass callback info and then provide all of your own methods to return the data, you know, the parameters. that fair? Because I think, yeah, if you basically subclassed, implement everything so it returns the data you want to have returned, then it might work.
Yeah.
But it seems like it would be a fair amount of work versus, hey, if I just can call some JavaScript, that's going to be a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, if this person wants to call a binding from native, they're better off just factoring out the body of the binding, because what are bindings? They're basically like convert all the parameters from JavaScript into some native parameter, then call a function and return the return value of that function. That's what a binding is. If it does anything more than that, then you're putting the code in the wrong place, basically, because you're going to run precisely into this issue where you have to call the binding because it does something useful.
Yep. And calling it through JavaScript is actually a much better test.
Exactly, yes, because it tests the intention of the binding.
Right. Like you could do the subclass, but the chance of you getting that subtly different from what you'll actually get is quite high. So okay, I think that's a reasonable answer, and we'll see. Maybe they'll explain a little bit more of their context, and that'll help us understand. But it seems like a reasonable answer. Okay, thanks, Nicola. For any others that we should add to that stale list?
No, for now, no.
Okay, thanks. So tracking issue for modules, I don't see that there's any new ones added there. Let's just check npm node add-on API. Okay, well, it's the curve seems higher. I don't know if that's a general download curve, but 7 million, wow.
Yeah, we have an increment of number of native of dependents, no? So 2 weeks ago were 1,181, and now we have this. So yeah, we have a little increment per week about native add-on written using NodeAPI.
Cool. And if we just look at NAN as a comparison,
they're still way ahead.
Still way ahead, but I think if you look at I'm just looking at, I mean, we're now it's Node add-on API is now a third, which is a pretty decent number. So versus like a year ago, I'm sure it was much less than that. So
and interestingly, it is a third, whereas our dependents are not a third. So that means we're capturing the heavy hitters that get lots of downloads.
But
yes.
Yeah, you have to consider that there are many add-ons that are written using the plain C API.
Yes, we're totally missing those too.
There are many add-ons that don't use NodeAPI. So
and those are hard to capture.
Yeah, I mean, like the plain Node add-on API. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Okay. No, that's good. Okay. So let's the tested methods. So Jack, do you have an update discussion on that front today?
Nothing there, but I have a question about like one of my PRs within Node Core.
Sure.
40552. If you can talk about it.
Go there.
I noticed like I had like 3 consecutive CI failures, so I was wondering if that's something with what I wrote, or is it like what
I'm gonna say it's unlikely to be yours.
Okay.
Like let's just find that though. So you said 40554.
Oh, sorry, 40552.
552. Okay.
Yeah.
Like I've got a few, and I've been like, there've been a fair amount of intermittent failures lately. Because if we look at what's failed,
Yeah, it seems pretty consistent with those ones.
Yeah, like, let me just see. I've tried to resume build a few. Let's see, view console output, like, yeah, like these are definitely not
Oh, okay.
that I've seen for other things. So I'm gonna like, have we, right, we've had a few attempts. And even like here, we can see that
Oh.
this gives information on like what's failing on different PRs. So like we can see I think there'll be like an LD or killed. So there are 14 different PRs where that was seen across different things. And so I'm gonna try, let's try again here anyway. I may have tried a few times to resume it, but sometimes like if there's fixes, we need to just, actually, I'm just gonna kick off a whole new build. Let me do that. But yeah, I think we'll try a few more times before you should worry about it being related. Because like if somebody fixed a flaky test or something,
Yeah.
unless you start a new build, it's not going to help. But yeah.
Okay.
Any other things on that front or?
Nothing at the moment.
Okay. Deepak, do you have anything on the work you're doing in terms of making it easier to run individual tests?
Yes. So I had responded to the comments, and I also added I had only one comment remaining from Kevin. I replied to that as well. I think the PR is pretty good to merge.
That is.
I had responded to Gabriel's comments as well. Gabriel, do you have any questions or follow-ups?
I haven't had a chance to check. I'll have to check again. 1078.
Right. Okay. So yeah, I think I can just see. Yeah, we just be good if you could take another quick look and then we can land that before it becomes too stale. Okay. Then down to, if we look at GitHub, actually, why don't I, since I'm already, no, I'm not there. Since we're here, no, okay, issues. And let's just see if there's anything sort of new that we think we should talk about. Just looking out, see, actually see anything too new. This one. Okay, so I think we had an answer there. Didn't need to have anything. None of these other ones look new enough, unless somebody has something we should discuss on them. And let's look at Node, and if we want to find issues, I want to find Node API. Maybe if I go to labels, it'll be easier. Okay, why is that? Right, there we go. Okay. Okay, I don't see anything too long there, I think. Right, this one, I guess there's some discussion. We've asked the ops, so maybe there's nothing really new on that one. This one, I think you commented, Gabriel, but I'm not sure I quite followed the suggestion.
Oh, this one. Yeah. Okay. So basically, this person is creating a buffer, right?
Yep.
Oh, wait a second. I think think I know why. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe you can correct me. My understanding was that this person is creating a buffer, right? And then they're taking a reference to the buffer, right? And the reference behaves differently for some reason than it should. And I remembered
Sorry, go ahead.
that. Yeah, I remembered that when we create references to buffers specifically, we don't use a regular finalizer. The buffer has its own buffer finalizer. And so we use that because the memory for the buffer has to be handled differently than for a regular reference. And so what I was thinking is we should do like when in NAPI create reference, we should do like this thing where we check if it's a buffer, and if it's a buffer, we create the reference using the buffer reference code path. But now that I think about it some more, the buffer created from JavaScript is never an external buffer, right? And we only need this for external buffer. So my comment may not actually be relevant.
Right. Like I think what the actual problem here is not how we finalize it, is that like you have an object and you create a reference to it, and then you remove that reference. But before the object is collected, you add another reference to it.
Okay.
And so the object itself, and they do that, and it's in a loop. So they continually use the same object and create new references to it. And the thing is
the
that
old ones?
Well, the thing is, yeah, basically they've removed the old reference no longer exists. However, the object never gets collected. And so we would delete these references when the object went away.
Yeah.
But the object never goes away because before it's like a tight loop where you continually create a new reference on the C level to the exact same object.
Right.
And
but wait a second. But they do call NAPI delete reference in a tight loop, right?
But I think the deletion is so let's see. I'm not sure. I don't think they actually delete it either.
Okay, well then
that's
a clear problem.
So they unref it. So they actually do an unref. Like, so they call unref to say, okay, well, my reference no longer keeps it alive, but we only delete the C reference once the object goes away, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's like, in my mind, it's like,
yes,
you really shouldn't be doing this. I can see how you do this in a test.
No, yeah.
But in the real world, you're never going to do this, right? And it's an artifact of like, hey, yeah, if you continually create references and then unref them to the exact same object, but keep the object alive, we don't do the final cleanup.
Yeah. If you, okay, I see. Yeah. Okay. So oh my goodness, that's terrible, right? Because so they're basically creating a reference, then weakening it, and then creating one and weakening it, creating one and weakening it, right? And
all on the exact same object. Like if you actually do it on a different object, everything works fine.
Well, yes, that's right. Yeah. So yeah, okay. So that there are all these like finalizer callbacks hanging on this one object.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's terrible. Yeah. So if they want to, I mean, this is in a synchronous loop, right? So then, why not just delete the reference if it's in a synchronous loop? That it doesn't make sense to unref it, because the garbage collector presumably doesn't have a chance to assess, or doesn't have a chance to mark the object as not used anymore, because, well, it's used, it's in the loop, right? Until the loop exits, the scope doesn't close. So then the garbage collector will never mark the object as ready for garbage collection, right? And so those weak references would there would be no reason for them to ever get called, because the object is not getting collected, right? Guaranteed.
Right. I guess it's that it may be possible, like in some use cases, you would actually, like, deleting might not be the right answer, because maybe you could have a few references that are keeping this thing alive and you only want it to be cleared up on the last one.
Oh, yeah. Normally, yes. But since you're in a loop, right, you know that you're going to be creating another reference to it before the loop exits, right? And if the loop does exit, then, and you delete references, So,
Right.
so basically, before you start the loop over, delete the reference, because you know the next iteration of the loop is going to create the reference, right?
I
Okay, or
think
no.
like this was just like test
Well, yeah.
code. Like I don't think they're struggling with this necessarily in an app they've written. I think it was more like, hey, we've written this test, and we can show you that they're never freed, right? So
yeah, I mean,
like it's easy to change the code. Like, so if they were really struggling with like, how do I fix this in a real app, I could see, but I think it was kind of like with Rust, the Rust wrapper, you could write a little bit of code and yeah, okay, these things, you can make this happen. And in the end, I hope we explained like, this is what's going on. And yes, that's kind of expected, right? But we don't think that you'd ever really need to be doing this.
Yeah.
I think it's just a little bit unexpected behavior of reference. I experienced the same stuff myself. Like you don't really expect that the last Unref and ref count goes to 0, it becomes just weak reference rather than just being deleting this reference.
Yeah.
Just,
well, it's not even a weak reference. It's that there's C code, there's C memory hanging around so you can do finalize or cleanup.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like just even like implementing this NAPI, like using this NAPI in different contexts, I face the same issue. That it was not obvious to me that I need to, instead of saying unref, the ref count is 1, I better to call delete reference, because technically if I put to 0, it's kind of expensive operation because internally creates weak reference and it's not cheap.
You're right. So it is better, like if you know there's no more references, deleting it, you're right, is better.
And probably I didn't look on the C++ wrappers, but probably C++ wrappers do all stuff for you automatically, but if you're just using C-based API, it's not obvious.
So is that something like you think maybe adding to the doc helps?
Probably yes, especially then we're saying this release unref reference that it's pretty much then it goes to 0, maybe just more like documentation issue.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that. Because if we can basically say, hey, do that, right, like do the delete. If you know you can do the delete instead, that would help avoid this. Okay, I don't think, unless there's other ones, is there any other ones that people think we should talk about? If not, then I know, Vladimir, you mentioned you had a few questions that you wanted to bring up this week.
Oh yes, as I mentioned before, a record started, like we're working on NAPI implementation for Hermes engine. Hermes engine is something that Facebook creates mostly in context of React Native. Main difference from other JavaScript engines that Hermes is interpreter only, because for some scenarios which are not calculation heavy, interpretation can be more beneficial, especially when you think about like application startup, also memory use and stuff. So technically, we see in some scenarios when we want to have React Native for UI, we see some clear benefits on top of the 8 engine because we use much less memory and we use kind of startup time faster and so on. So technically, we see, at least in Microsoft Office, there are some scenarios where we see benefits of using Hermes engine, the UI-only scenarios, and we have some benefits of using the 8 engine in like custom Excel calculations or something like this. So V8 definitely kind of wins there. But anyway, as I implemented this NAPI for Hermes, I have a few questions. Like one of them, probably easy one, like there are some features which Hermes engine didn't implement yet. for example, big integer, and NAPI has APIs for them. So what will be kind of reasonable way to do, like just simply return generic failure or something in case of this function not implemented?
Is it, so there'd be kind of like that one in particular, I think there's two things that come to mind. There are different NodeAPI versions. So potentially you could say that it only supports the version that was pre-big integer.
Yep.
I don't know if that works though, because there may be some features you do want to support. But anyway, that just came to mind. Like in a very specific, some very specific cases, you might say, well, we only provide an earlier one.
Yeah, I think like if I'm not mistaken, it was added like version 6 or something like this. Big-in support is added quite early because V8 supports big-in for some time. And I think like Hermes does not have scenarios, at least no customers who asking for this feature yet. There are other features more important people asking for.
Right.
Like promises or something like this.
But the problem with the NodeAPI version is that maybe he want some feature that we added, for example, in version 8, and the beginner was added in version 6, I think, if I will remember. Yeah. So maybe. Yeah, you can throw a fail, but then maybe if you think at ECMA standard, you should say that that engine does not implement that particular feature, no? Because NodeAPI, abstract, the concept over the JavaScript standard. So the JavaScript side, of NodeAPI, but yeah, maybe it's reasonable for me that you say that it's not implemented yet.
I was just thinking from what you were saying, Nicola, that generic error is kind of, well, generic, right? So if we want it to be super nice, we might want to add a status code that says like not implemented, and that would be a lot clearer,
Yeah.
And then you could do a PR against Node to introduce the status code. But generic is just generic is okay too, right? And you can just document that it's not implemented, and so it throws generic. It's really, and I mean, from what you're saying, nobody's going to run into this because nobody's using BigInt right now, right? So, and I understand that people might start trying to use it because they're consulting the main NAPI documentation, and it's like, ooh, it's got BigInts. Let me try it, and then they're like, nope. Well,
the other thing is it like if somebody writes, part of it is you kind of expect to be able to write your add-on, and then it'll run on anything that has that level of NAPI support, and so it's kind of breaking that promise if you say, hey, well, sorry, it's not actually implemented, right?
Yeah.
But if you're writing an NAPI add-on, you're also handling the NAPI status, right? And so it will return not NAPI okay, right? And you're expected to handle that. So yes, it behaves differently on different engines, but we fail in a way that's consistent with an API, and you should be expecting those failures, right?
Yeah, but we don't expect everybody to check every call they make to see if it's an implemented function or not, right? Because like the whole idea is like, you opt into NAPI 7 and therefore
you get NAPI 7.
You get NAPI 7, right? So like this does sound like a special case where every engine doesn't you know, I think like a not implemented makes sense, but it's kind of like you don't want that to be the regular. You potentially lose the, hey, I've got something that's already compiled. It won't necessarily run across the different engines in this case. But I don't think you should be asking people to write their modules to check and then cope with being not implemented or something. I guess in maybe some very small cases, right?
Yeah. No, I'm not suggesting we add that to the main documentation, but maybe to the documentation for this implementation. You know.
Yeah.
So when
and
we
I
download
could go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was going to say I could see in Node add-on API, we could have a define which is like Hermes or something that says, filter out the things I can use.
Like in C++ libraries, like as they implemented like new standards, they have some special kind of if-def for different kind of features, if you like. Because big-int is a feature,
right?
This feature is clearly missing from this specific JavaScript engine. And it's similar stuff people do in C++ libraries. They simply said, oh, like say no except was not supported yet. Like, and people can just simply use if-def to check this feature, if it's feature there or not.
Right, and you can do that by using an earlier NodeAPI version. Like if you compile your add-on for an
version, it's not only like it's not feature dependent. NodeAPI is actually kind of functionality. It may add new functionality. For example, add finalizer was added much later. Like I would like to use add finalizer,
right? Yeah,
while I may not have begin, right? Like
you always get into that. Like unless you actually like have it defined for every little feature, you're going to you get some grouping together usually, but.
Well, for example, right now there is no support, native support in engine for promises. So pretty much any kind of APIs which we have today for promises may be also difficult to implement. One of the solutions could be like similar to what you propose, that maybe we can add some set of defines which can filter out some non-supported APIs.
Right.
It makes sense.
Yeah, like I guess it's the like in the compile, like because it's about people who when you write your add-on, do you want to make sure it's going to run across all these different engines? And so maybe like even just in the include file, something that filters out, that is a filter, an engine filter would help on that front. Now, whether that should be in Node, yeah, I'm not so. I think like in Node add-on API, it would actually be a good place to put that, where basically it says, you could have a defined, require Hermes or something, or require V8, like require Hermes supported by Hermes, require supported by V8. And there we could filter out things in Node add-on API because it's not, Node add-on API is a wrapper that's not tied to Node. In Node itself, I'm not thinking that you would necessarily do that. But in the separate repo, right? So Nicola, we have the separate repo with the headers, right?
We have the NodeAPI headers. So yeah, in that repo, we could do that. So if I well understood, we should define macro per JavaScript engine and select, and we use them to select the feature. Is it right?
Yeah, like there'd be basically would help people who are compiling and want to be able to support a certain set of engines. They could specify that, and then it would filter out things that they can't actually use.
Okay.
I think that doesn't answer. I mean, your original question of what should you do if somebody calls something, that's sort of a tangential, because we're talking more about like how do we help people not do that. I think the suggestion of having like a non-implemented, like an error code, PRing that into core would make sense to me. And then that's just something you can return that's more specific than a generic error.
Yeah, because generic failure could be everything, and instead the real reason is that the JavaScript engine does not support the feature. Yeah.
And as we talk about this error messages, like say, for example, invalid argument, right? Like for example, some people can pass null when null not expected, and we return this NAPI invalid arg.
Yeah.
But how developer would actually find out like what something fails, right? Like, and they see this wrong status code. How they can find out like which exactly argument was bad? How would
I mean, they have to, basically figure that out through experimentation at this point.
So I wonder, like, I guess my question is a kind of, are there any thoughts to add some extended error info, like, for example, just simply maybe providing string, and this string would internally say, yes, this argument foo is null.
We already have that method. There is a like get extended info method.
Yeah.
And so it will, but I don't think we set any extra info in terms of the argument. We probably could. So that's probably, we've documented that as platform and implementation specific. So that's something you could add in your implementation that's not in the Node one.
Okay. So what you're saying, like there is in this extended error info, we have this special field for engine specific info, which is like probably
it's basically like
and, we can use it as a string, right? Like
well, there is there's like, let me just find that. No API Node.js API docs.
I sent on the chat.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, okay. And I could just share that for a sec. If that share. Did I get the? Sorry, did I not get the right link for some reason?
Hey, sorry, I had some connectivity issues. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was just gonna say, like, the status I think is better because it's like if we added hash defines to the header file, then compile, but now you're asking people to compile the add-on for different implementations, which is what we're trying to avoid with an API, right? I think you guys came to the same conclusion.
It was more in my mind about helping people, like, it wouldn't be that you needed to use any of these, but if you wanted to say, I want to support these ones, you could easily have stuff filtered out for you. But but I don't see that, like, I don't think that would make sense in the ones that are in the Node repo at all, because we know that we've implemented them all. In the shared external repo with the headers, maybe, but then that adds extra like differences between what's in Node and what's in the shared headers, right?
Yeah.
But so I think to answer the real question, it's like, yeah, adding a new field to the core would make sense. It says it's not implemented. And then as Nicola pointed to, this NAPI extended info, you could say more, in there you have the engine error code and the and a string that you can provide.
Yeah,
so it's a good suggestion. Yes, I'll use it. And should we say not supported or not implemented? What would be better? I think like
implemented. I think let's be very, very specific about the error, right?
Yeah.
Not supported might have different semantics from not implemented.
Yeah, I like
this
that.
This is specifically too. Like lacking an implementation.
Okay, sounds good. There are some other kind of things which just simply missing or difficult to do in Hermes engine, which
I'm just gonna, like, I have a hard stop in 4 minutes. Okay. So I will make, can anybody else stick around longer?
It's good for me.
Okay, so I'll make you the owner of the video. the host, and so it'll keep going until you close the chat, and I'll drop off, sorry, quietly at 12. So sorry, go ahead, Lemire.
Okay, so another question, I guess, for me, it's what I a little bit stuck with. Today, finalizers in NodeAPI, they can access, I think they allow to access engine, JavaScript engine functions. And usually it's kind of done for a special secondary callback in garbage collector. And currently this mechanism is missing in Hermes engine. So I just wonder like, what's the kind of your general feeling about this finalizers being able to do this all this extended work? How important it is for NodeAPI?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it depends on the add-on, whether it calls into JS or not, right? Some add-ons do, some add-ons don't. It depends on the use case, but the fact that it's able to do that is another difference, right? So we actually have a situation that is kind of limited right now in Node, which is you are unable to run JavaScript from a finalizer when the environment is being destroyed, right? So if you're a worker thread and you have weak references, right? At the end of the worker thread, we see what weak references the engine has left us, and then we finalize them all, right? In a loop, synchronous loop. And during the execution of this loop, JavaScript execution is unavailable, right? And right now, there's really nothing we can do about that, because I mean the engine is gone. There's just nothing. You can't call into the engine if the engine is gone, right? And so we were debating as to whether to add a status code for that, like, cannot execute JavaScript. But there are some things that you can still do with the engine, like delete references and this kind of stuff, which doesn't involve the execution of JavaScript. But it's still very sort of heterogeneous. So we have a precedent for this, where you just cannot call into JavaScript, and if you try to call NodeAPI anything, it will just come back with an error. So given that we have this precedent, it may not be the end of the world if you just returned an error code there. And you can check the implementation in Node.js to see what error code we return. It's a terrible error code because it doesn't tell you what's going on. But actually, let me see if I can find that for you.
That's only during shutdown. Is that the same case as you, Vladimir, or is it?
No, I think in Vladimir's case, it's every case. So even during normal operations, you cannot call into JavaScript from a finalizer. That is my understanding. So yeah, it's worse, but at least it's not without precedent that you cannot call JavaScript from a finalizer. So given that we have this precedent, folks writing add-ons might have a special code path for what happens if this thing returns an error. So you have a little bit of wiggle room there, but it's not ideal.
Yeah, I know if it doesn't, because again, it is something that will prevent some things out there from running across the different engines.
Yeah. Let me just see where we have this. Oh boy.
I've got to drop off, but I'll try and listen in and see what I'm sure we'll have more discussion on some of these anyway. So talk to everybody later. Bye.
Yep, talk to you later.
Bye.
Okay, and can call into JS native API VH line 218. Circ JS native HL 218. Okay. Yeah, okay. So all right. Okay. Oh my goodness, this is terrible. This is absolutely terrible. We return NodeAPI pending exception. is just absolutely terrible, but that's what we do. So it says like, if you call a function that has an NAPI preamble, then we return an API pending exception if the last exception is empty and okay, yeah. If either the last exception is not empty, then we return an API pending exception. That makes sense. But if you cannot call into JS, then we also return an API pending exception, and that is just terrible.
Yeah.
So yeah, and we're stuck with that because we've released with that. So if we change the error code now, then it wouldn't work. And that's just bad because, you know, then people try to get the last exception, maybe handle it, but yeah, we're stuck with this implementation. So yeah, like I said, there is precedent, but there's no good solution.
Okay, and if we do with pending exceptions, should we kind of somehow like, yeah, there's no way for us to synthesize this exception, right? If people ask for it.
Well, no, there, yeah, that's right. There isn't because well, you can't use the engine anymore, right? So yeah, I mean, if you try to get the last exception, that call would probably also fail because the last exception is null. So yeah, that's a good point. Let me see. Get, what was it? I forgot the name of the function. Okay, NodeAPI get and clear last exception. That's what it is. Okay, so let's see what happens. See, okay, get and clear. Okay, I see. Okay, well, we're actually not so bad because get and clear last exception. If and last exception is empty, return NAPI get undefined. Okay, end result. Okay, so it returns undefined, but that in itself may fail because if you cannot retrieve the undefined value from the engine, then you get an error probably. So let's see, NAPI get undefined.
Yeah, I think I'm going to cache undefined values like now undefined. So I think I don't need to go to engine at this point. And Hermes in this sense is pretty good because they're using this this double encoding, double kind of wrapping. Pretty much all values kind of wrapped up inside of double.
Oh, nice. Good. Okay, good. So then you have a way out. Then you can just return undefined. Yeah. Okay, good. So undefined is like a constant value defined on the native side, right? That's good. Okay.
I have more questions, but I don't want to hold on anymore. I would rather kind of talk to you guys next week.
One observation that I have based on your questions is that, you know, we're kind of, you know, we're kind of turning into like this situation where jQuery was at some point, right? Different browsers had different features and jQuery tried to sort of unify them. So now that we're implementing this on multiple engines, we're finding that, you know, different engines have different features, and sooner or later we're going to need somebody somewhere to like polyfill or somehow, you know, smooth over these differences. But you know, as the implementation as NodeAPI, we can only do so much. We can give you an indication that there are differences, but we cannot fix the differences for you, right? That needs to be done outside the implementation, you know. So we're turning into that kind of a project, but anyway, that's just philosophy. But yeah, so I mean, you know, please join us next week and we'll have more time for this. Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your help. I really appreciate it. It helps a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. See you.
Okay. Yep. See you next week.
Yep. Talk to you all next week. Bye.
Bye.